Welcome to Calm Coding. We're the weekly show that digs into the cybersecurity stories that really matter. Our goal, as always, is to cut through the noise, find the signals, and give you some clear, actionable understanding. And this week, wow, the sources paint a pretty stark picture. We're looking at this intersection of immediate threats, things needing patches right now, and these bigger systemic weaknesses. We've got warnings about exploits hitting systems, huge cloud problems, and those hidden dangers in supply chains.
Yeah, it's quite the mix. It really is. On one side, you have active attacks using flaws we knew about months ago, things that, should be fixed. And then on the other side, you see this massive global infrastructure kind of shuddering because of one seemingly localized operational glitch. So we'll dig into what these incidents really tell us about the fragility and how connected everything is today.
Okay, let's start with the urgent stuff, patching. There's this Windows vulnerability, high severity, that's gone from theory to active threat.
Yeah.
We're talking about the SMB flaw, right? CVE 2025-33073.
Oh.
Has a pretty serious score, 8.8.
That's right, an 8.8. And it hits older Windows 10, Windows 11, and Windows Server versions. The core problem is in the server message block protocol, SMB. It handles file and print sharing, basic network stuff. But the issue here is about improper access controls. It allows for a specific kind of attack.
Right, and it's not just like a simple exploit. It's about coercion, isn't it? Tricking the system.
Exactly. Coercion is the key word. The attacker runs a script, and the goal is to basically force the victim's machine to try and authenticate back to the attacker's machine over SMB. If that happens, the authentication attempt itself can leak sensitive credential information, like NTLM hashes.
Which the attacker then takes offline, cracks.
And potentially gets system-level access, yeah. It's a classic privilege escalation path.
And the timeline here is what's, frankly, a bit concerning. Microsoft patched this way back in June 2025. Standard patch Tuesday.
Yeah.
But then, fast forward to October 20th, just a few days ago, and CISA, the U.S. cybersecurity agency, adds it to their known exploited vulnerabilities list, the KHV list.
Which is the official confirmation. It means, yes, attackers are out there actively using this flaw against systems that, well, haven't applied that June patch.
That 4-month gap.
Yeah.
That's the window.
It really highlights the risk of slow patching cycles. So for any organization listening, if you haven't done the June 2025 update, that's priority 1. But beyond that, you need defense in depth. Monitor for weird outbound SMB traffic, lock down SMB exposure, only allow it on trusted networks. Treat it seriously.
Okay, so that's one immediate fire. But speaking of serious targets, let's shift to the F5 breach. This feels different. If patching is about known flaws, what happens when the actual source code of critical network gear gets stolen?
That's a much deeper, longer-term problem. F5 confirmed recently they were breached, attributed it to a nation-state-affiliated actor, and the attackers got away with some very sensitive files, including, crucially, parts of the source code for their Bigot IP product line and also some vulnerability data.
Source code theft. That's like giving the attackers the architectural blueprints, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. It lets sophisticated groups analyze the code offline, look for subtle flaws, potentially discover 0 days vulnerabilities nobody else knows about yet, and then they can craft exploits that are much harder to detect because they're based on that inside knowledge.
And the potential blast radius here is huge. F5 gear is everywhere. Shadow Server Foundation found, over 266,000 big IP instances just exposed on the public internet.
Yeah, huge numbers, mostly US, Europe, Asia. These devices often sit at critical points in networks, handling traffic, security. So compromising them is a major goal for attackers.
Which explains the federal reaction. CISA issued an emergency directive, ED 26-101, pretty strong language.
Very strong. They called it an imminent threat to federal networks.
And demanded federal agencies inventory and patch F5 products on incredibly tight deadlines, like October 22nd and 31st. Just days.
That kind of speed shows how seriously they're taking the risk. They're worried about things like mass credential theft from the devices or attackers using them as beachheads into federal systems.
So the lesson here seemed to be, even if you're patched against known issues, source code theft means you could be facing unknown threats down the line. Requires constant vigilance.
Absolutely. Inventory what you have, patch what you can, and watch closely for any unusual activity related to those F5 devices.
Okay, so we've talked about specific flaws, patches, breaches. Let's pivot now. Let's look at systemic risk. Even if every server is patched, every device secure. What about the foundations? the cloud itself.
Ah, yes, the cloud conundrum. And the recent AWS outage is, well, a perfect, if worrying, example. October 20th, 2025. AWS had what they called an operational issue. It's centered on DynamoDB APIs in the US East 1 region. Seems related to DNS problems, ultimately.
And the disconnect between that specific fault, one service, one region, and the global impact is just staggering. It wasn't just a few websites down. It hit major banks, HMRC, Barclays, Lloyds over in the UK. Business tools everyone relies on, Zoom, Slack, Canva, gaming platforms. It felt like half the internet slowed down.
Well, that's where market share comes in. AWS controls something like 30% of the global cloud market. Jake Moore at ESEP pointed that out. When one provider has that much dominance, especially in a key region like US East 1, which is often the default and one of the oldest, any significant hiccup there will have widespread consequences.
Brent Ellis at Forrester actually put a name on this, right? Concentration risk.
Exactly. Concentration risk. It's the systemic danger that builds up when too many critical services rely on a single provider, or even a single geographic region of that provider.
It's easy to do for convenience, but it creates this massive single point of failure.
And Charlotte Wilson from Checkpoint made a great point. Convenience is built on these shared, interdependent systems. So a local fault can cascade globally in minutes. The ripples spread incredibly fast.
You can see why regulators are getting interested now. In the UK, they're talking about the Critical Third Parties Regime, the CTP, and parts of the Financial Services and Markets Act.
Definitely. It's a direct response to this cloud dependency. We're likely going to see more mandated requirements around resilience, failover testing, maybe even diversification for critical industries.
So for businesses, the advice seems to be, don't put all your eggs in US East 1. Diversify regions, maybe even providers. Test your failover plans regularly. Train your teams for outages.
Right, build for resilience.
Yeah.
But there's another angle, too, the individual user during these events. Vonnie Gamot at McAfee warned about this. Cybercriminals love chaos. During the outage recovery, expect a spike in fake support scams, phishing emails pretending to be from affected services, trying to trick confused or frustrated users.
Good point. Stay extra vigilant when things are chaotic online. Don't click weird links. Don't give out info, even if it looks like help is being offered. And, this idea of concentration risk, it doesn't just apply to giant cloud providers. It seems to filter down the supply chain too, right? To smaller partners.
Absolutely. That's the supply chain weak spot. We saw a really clear example with the Japanese retailer Muji. They had to halt online sales, stop people browsing their site, even pause access to order histories. Why? Because their logistics partner, a company called Askul, got hit by ransomware.
So Muji itself wasn't breached, but the attack on their partner paralyzed their online operations.
Precisely. And it's not an isolated case. Think about Asahi, the beer company, or Jaguar Land Rover. They've also faced production stoppages because key third-party suppliers were hit by cyber attacks.
It raises that question, why hit the supplier instead of the big name directly?
It's often the path of least resistance. A huge company like Muji probably has significant cybersecurity defenses, but a smaller logistics partner or a software vendor, they might not have the same budget, the same resources, the same focus on security. So for an attacker, hitting that less defended supplier can be an easier way to disrupt the bigger target or even gain access indirectly. It dramatically expands the attack surface.
It makes sense. You attack the weakest link to impact the whole chain. Now, while most of this week's news is about reacting to failures, there was one interesting little development on the proactive side concerning VPNs and Amazon's new OS.
Yeah, the NordVPN thing.
Yeah.
So Amazon released a new Fire TV stick, the 4K Select model, and it runs a new operating system, Vega OS, not the usual Android-based Fire OS. This seems like Amazon trying to create more of a walled garden, maybe making it harder to sideload apps or install things they don't approve of.
Kind of logging it down more.
Right. And NordVPN responded quickly by creating a new native Linux-based app specifically for Vega OS. They claim it's the first native VPN solution for this new platform.
So users who want a VPN on that new device for, securing their streaming, staying anonymous, or getting around geo-blocks for Netflix or whatever, they now have a direct, supported way to do it, rather than trying to find workarounds. It's an example of a security vendor adapting quickly to maintain user choice, even as platforms try to exert more control. Interesting contrast. Fighting for user control on one level, while we see systemic loss of control due to dependence on another. Okay, let's try and bring this all together. We've covered quite a bit.
Okay.
We started with the absolute need to patch known exploited flaws. That Windows SMB vulnerability is a prime example.
Hmm.
And the F5 breach shows a severe risk when even the source of security is compromised, demanding immediate action.
Hmm. The reactive immediate fires.
Then we shifted to that huge structural problem of digital reliance. The AWS outage wasn't about a targeted attack, but showed how concentrated infrastructure is inherently fragile. And the Muji incident highlighted how that fragility extends down through the supply chain, hitting businesses via their less secure partners.
Yeah, it really paints a picture of what some people are calling a kind of digital pandemic, where these single points of failure, whether it's an unpatched server, a single cloud region, a vulnerable supplier, can cause these cascading global problems. Building true resilience, thinking about it structurally, seems way more important than just, chasing the latest patch Tuesday, though you still have to do that too.
Absolutely. It's both immediate defense and long-term architectural thinking. So that's the landscape we've explored today. But let's leave you, our listener, with something to mull over. Given how fragile we've seen the digital backbone can be, the AWS outage is proof. And how much modern life, especially things like payments, relies completely on this virtual connectivity. What kind of architectural changes should policymakers actually mandate? Should they be forcing critical services to use multiple vendors, multiple clouds to guarantee resilience, instead of just relying on companies to test their own backups after something goes wrong? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning into Coding. Keep thinking critically, stay prepared, and we'll catch you next week.